The new horror game Senses Midnight is set in the far-off future when people will live stream themselves doing incredibly stupid things for likes and comments. I hate to break it to second-time developer Suzaku Games, but we're already living in that dystopia. Forget ghosts, what's truly scary is that we currently live in a world addicted to attention and in constant need of validation. So, to get into the spirit of this game, I recommend that you click that like button and leave a comment on my review of Senses Midnight. Let me introduce you to Kaho, a young girl and occult researcher who's live streaming her visit to the long-abandoned Ikebukuro walking park. The legend says that if you come at night, the midnight door will open and the victim's corrupted spirits will escape and look for vengeance. This is too much to resist for the local ghost hunter who turns on her camera with the hopes of giving her audience a real show. All while wearing the skimpiest dress possible because, some things never change. Because she's live streaming her adventure into the ghost-filled park, a lot of the story and dialogue is conveyed through the chat window. As Kaho uncovers clues, discovers new locations, and runs into just generally scary things, the chat will chime in with their own thoughts and reactions. A lot of this is playful and even occasionally funny, but there's a real sense of dread that sets in as we begin to realize the deadly situation the live streamer finds herself in. Thankfully, there's a person in chat that seems to know what's going on and maybe even how to survive the night. But should we trust him? Do we even have a choice? The entire game takes place in a small walking park that's been completely walled off from the rest of the city. While it's not obvious at first, the goal is to walk around the park and pick up items that you'll use to solve puzzles and other simple tasks. This becomes tricky when you realize that Kaho can only hold 4 items at the same time, which means that she's gonna have to constantly drop items and manage the very limited inventory. This is, of course, one of the pillars of the survival horror experience, and Senses Midnight is definitely a survival horror game. If it wasn't for the somewhat modern visuals, you might think that this was a long-forgotten game from the 1990s. I mean, it even employs the tank controls made famous by Resident Evil and Silent Hill. This is the kind of game that drops you into a haunted location without any weapons or ammo, forcing our hero to use her wits to solve puzzles and outrun a lot of scary ghosts. Now, while the park may not be very big, it's full of supernatural surprises. On top of picking up items and solving puzzles, Kaho will have to use her camera to investigate the area for hidden clues. Sometimes that's just symbols that the chat will try to decipher, while other times she'll catch a ghost hiding in the dark recesses of the forest. There are a lot of genuinely spooky moments tucked away inside this game, though a lot of it you're gonna have to track down on your own. This helps to extend what is otherwise a short and straightforward adventure. For as much as I cringe while watching IRL streamers, I have to admit that this is a pretty great setup for a horror game. I like the idea of the chat constantly adding commentary to the game and not always being on the side of Kaho. If anything, I wish the game would have leaned more into that aspect of social media. The chat only comes up when they have something important to say, which allows you to separate the game from the chat. I would have preferred that they had kept the chat box up at all times, reacting to, just about everything. Would a lot of it be Pepe frogs and dumb emojis? Sure, but at least that would be authentic to the live stream experience. It would honestly help to sell the idea that she has an audience, something that I found myself forgetting about in the whole second half of the game. Unfortunately, this is just one of the issues that I have with the game's execution. I'm also not a huge fan of the puzzles, which are obtuse and often come across as little more than busy work. This is especially true with coin collecting, which ends up being a lot more important and frustrating than you initially expect. The fact that you can only hold 4 items at once is also annoying, even if that is one of the genre's cliches. There's no reason why this needs to be the case either, especially considering that she comes to the park with a backpack ready to be filled up. It forces you to strategically discard a lot of items, which in turn creates a whole lot of backtracking. It also doesn't help that the park is incredibly small and tends to look the same. Don't get me wrong, I like the idea of being dropped in a haunted mansion or some sort of isolated location like that. But even Resident Evil knew that you had to shake things up from time to time with an underground laboratory or creepy hedge maze. It really only takes you a few minutes to run from one side of the park to the other, so you're constantly saying the same spots and landmarks over and over and over again. And, did I mention that the ghosts and spirits are terrible villains? Well, they are. There are only a couple of different types, both of which are extremely easy to avoid. The game wants you to use these special hiding spots to avoid the supernatural creatures roaming the park, but you can usually sidestep these ghouls and ghosts without breaking a sweat. And in the off chance they actually do get cornered by a spirit, there are a bunch of special items that you can pick up that will destroy the ghost on contact. You'll still probably die a few times, but compared to most old-school survival horror game, Sense's Midnight is, well, a walk in the park. I admit it, there's a certain charm in this game that makes me want to like it. I dig the setup, and I found the haunted park to be genuinely unnerving. Hell, I even liked the live stream conceit, even though I found Kaho to be unbearable. The problem is that for everything that I liked about Sense's Midnight, there was something that just left me cold. It's the kind of middle-of-the-road horror game that's not good enough to recommend, but also not bad enough to be memorable. Worst of all, it's a missed opportunity to actually say something about our attention-obsessed culture and the types of people that would go to a haunted park just for views. This could have been so much better. Sense's Midnight is a throwback to a time when survival horror was all about using tank controls to outrun ghouls and ghosts. This updated remix on the formula sees a young girl live streaming herself entering a haunted park in the middle of the night. Things do not go well, which both delights and horrifies her hyperactive chat room. That's a cool gimmick for a horror game, but the potential is undermined by a short adventure that ends right as it's starting to pick up speed. Other issues involve a frustrating inventory system, easily avoided ghosts, and a park that's so small that you'll be sick of backtracking within the first few minutes. It's a bit of a mess, but ghost hunting is way more fun than watching somebody spend the afternoon sitting in a kiddie pool. Hey, thanks for watching our review. If you liked what you saw here, then you should know that we post new reviews and features almost every day. Now, you may have noticed that we slowed down our reviews over the last month or so. That's largely because I've had a lot of other work to do, and also because my console capture card broke on me and I needed to get a new one. We'll be back in business next week with a bunch of reviews that I've been meaning to get to. Now, here's the question I have for you. What is the scariest location in a video game? It can be genuinely frightening or, scary for a completely different reason. I'll let you decide how you want to answer that. Let me see your thoughts in the comments below. In other news, we'll be back tomorrow with either an episode of EGM's Best and Worst Consoles, or something related to the Nintendo Switch Online review crew. It's your call, Nintendo. While you wait to see what happens, I strongly recommend you click that subscribe button and support what we're doing here. Until then,